She posted a late-night Instagram story saying, "Some people are just temporary lessons, broken heart," with a subtle hint about me. I didn't respond. Months later, she deleted it after people started connecting the timeline and asking questions she couldn't answer. Some people are just temporary lessons, broken heart. She posted that at 1:47 in the morning. And right below those words, sitting there like it was nothing, was a photo of the olive green hoodie she'd borrowed from me 8 months ago and never returned. I saw it. I read it twice. I put my phone face down on the nightstand, turned off the lamp, stared at the ceiling in the dark, and didn't say a single word. Not to her. Not to anyone. That silence, that one small, deliberate choice I made to say nothing at all, turned into the thing she never fully recovered from. Because what she didn't count on was this. When you post something like that and tag it with a location everyone in your shared social circle recognizes, when you post it wearing something that belongs to someone specific, when you post it at nearly 2 a.m. after a very public, very traceable series of events, people notice. People always notice. And months later, when they started connecting the timeline and asking her questions she couldn't answer without exposing herself, she deleted the whole thing. But screenshots live forever. And so does what happened between us. I want you to understand what was at stake before I even get into the full story. Because this wasn't just about a cryptic Instagram post. This was about 2.5 years of my life. 2.5 years of building something with someone I genuinely thought understood me. 2.5 years of mornings, arguments, repairs, trust, compromise, vulnerability, all of it stacked on top of each other like blocks. And then one night, quietly, without a single direct conversation, she decided to knock the whole thing over using social media as her hammer. And the scariest part? She did it while still referring to herself as someone who hates drama. I didn't realize it then, sitting in that dark room with my phone face down, but that moment changed everything. Not just between us. Everything. If you enjoy real stories like this, subscribe, because what happened next changed everything for me. I was 26 when this started unraveling. She was 24. We'd been together for 2 years, and about 7 months at the time of the post. We lived in the same city, shared a lot of the same friends, and had been, at least from the outside, one of those couples people described as solid. That's it. That's all the background you need right now. The first time I noticed something shifting, we'd been together for about 2 years. We were at her friend Brooke's apartment. One of those casual Saturday evenings that somehow turns into everyone staying until midnight without planning to. Cassie was across the room. She'd been across the room from me for most of the night. And I don't mean physically avoiding me, nothing that dramatic, but there was a distance to it. Like she was orbiting the room in a way that didn't include me in the orbit. I chalked it up to the energy of the night. She was catching up with people. It was fine. But then I saw her laugh. Not a regular laugh. The kind she gave people when something was politely funny. This was the real one, the full one, the one where she kind of leans forward and covers her mouth. She was laughing like that at something Brooke's boyfriend's friend, Owen, had said. Owen, tall guy, works in marketing, I think. Very easy presence about him. The kind of person a room gravitates toward without him really doing anything intentional to make it happen. I noticed it for about 3 seconds. Then I let it go. That was my first mistake. Not that Owen meant anything significant yet, but the act of noticing something and then immediately training yourself not to think about it. That habit becomes dangerous over time. I had a very well-practiced ability to see a small thing and talk myself out of its importance. She'd been relying on that ability for a while without me realizing it. The weeks after Brooke's party felt normal. We went on a weekend trip to a cabin 2 hours outside the city. Just the two of us. No phones for most of Saturday. Cooking actual meals together, sleeping in late. It was genuinely good. Whatever I'd felt at the party dissolved somewhere between the pine trees and the second cup of coffee on Sunday morning. She rested her head on my shoulder on the drive back. She fell asleep somewhere around the 40-minute mark. I remember thinking, this is what real feels like. Not the Instagram version. Not the version people perform for each other. This quiet, unremarkable, deeply comfortable thing. I thought we were fine. I thought we were better than fine. But there was something I didn't know yet. Something that had already been set in motion before the cabin, before Brooke's party, before most of what I thought was our normal. And I wouldn't find out what it was until much later. The first real sign, the one I can look back at now and see clearly, happened on a Tuesday. We were at dinner, just the two of us, nothing special. She was on her phone more than usual. Not unusual for her, honestly, but there was something about the angle she was holding it at. like she was aware of where my eyes were. I didn't say anything. I talked about my week, asked about hers. We split a dessert we both said we didn't want and then both agreed to get anyway. Normal. But when we got back to my place and she went to use the bathroom, her phone lit up on the couch cushion. I wasn't snooping. I wasn't hovering. I happened to be sitting 2 feet away when the screen lit up with a preview notification. One name, Owen, and the first few words of the message. Tonight was. That was it. The preview cut off. She came back from the bathroom. I was looking at my own phone. She picked hers up, read something, put it face down in her lap. And I sat there and thought, tonight was what? Tonight was what exactly? I didn't ask. I stayed quiet. And that habit of mine, the one I told you about, the one where I see something and immediately train myself not to make it into more than it is, did its job perfectly. I put it down. I let it go. I did not follow up. Until about 3 weeks later, I had reason to wish I had. The fight started over something small, like most of them do. I made a comment about her being consistently late, not in a harsh way, or at least I didn't intend it harshly, but she heard it a certain way and we were off. But here's the strange part. The thing she said in the middle of the fight, not at the beginning, not at the end, right in the middle, when we'd both gotten loud and then suddenly gone quiet in that way couples do when they've crossed into something neither of them intended. She said, "You never actually see me." I paused. What does that mean? I mean, you see what you want to see. You see the version of me that fits into your life neatly, but you don't actually look. I didn't have an answer for that. Not because it was devastating, but because it felt like a line that had been prepared in advance. Like it had been sitting somewhere, waiting for the right moment to be deployed. That's not how raw, in-the-moment arguments work. That's how arguments work when you've been rehearsing your grievances in conversations with other people. I filed that away, and after the fight cooled, the way ours always did, slowly, like a fire running out of oxygen, I filed it even deeper. We didn't break up. We talked it out. She cried a little. I apologized for the lateness comment. She said she'd work on communication. We held each other on the couch for a while. I told myself the storm had passed. But storms don't pass. They just move. The Instagram story happened on a night I thought was going to be completely unremarkable. I had a long week at work. The kind where by Friday afternoon you're running purely on the mechanical memory of what you're supposed to do next. Cassie and I had plans to meet for dinner. 6:30. Her suggestion. At 5:58, she texted, "Hey, can we push to tomorrow? I'm really tired." Fine. Totally fine. I ate leftovers. Watched something on TV I don't even remember. Was asleep by 10. At 1:47 a.m., my phone lit up. Not a message to me. A notification from Instagram. She'd posted a story. Now, I want to be clear about something. I wasn't the type of person to check Instagram obsessively in the middle of the night. I wasn't scrolling waiting for her to post. I happened to be half awake because I'd gone to sleep so early, and my brain was doing that thing where it surfaces at an odd hour and checks whether the world still exists. My phone was on the nightstand. The screen lit up. I picked it up out of pure reflex. And there it was. Some people are just temporary lessons, broken heart. White text on a black background. And right below it, embedded in the story like a deliberate footnote, a photo of her sitting cross-legged on what was obviously not her couch. On my couch. In my hoodie. The olive green one I'd looked for twice in the past month and assumed I'd lost somewhere. She'd posted a photo of herself in my apartment, in my clothing, with a caption about someone being a lesson she'd learned. And the timestamp of that photo, which was visible in the corner, was from 8 months ago. Meaning she'd been holding onto that photo. Meaning she'd selected it. Meaning none of this was accidental. I read it again. Slowly. I put my phone face down. Turned off the lamp. Lay in the dark. And I made a decision. I was not going to say one word. Not tonight. Not tomorrow. Not until I understood exactly what was happening. What had already happened, and what she was actually telling people through that story. Because that post wasn't for me. If she had something to say to me, she had my number. She had the ability to call, text, come over. That post was for an audience. And when someone performs their pain for an audience instead of bringing it to you directly, you need to be very careful about what you're actually dealing with. I closed my eyes. I did not respond. And that silence, the loudest thing I ever didn't say, began doing its work immediately. By Saturday morning, I'd received 3 texts from mutual friends. Not about me, specifically, just casual, vague texts, the kind that are clearly phishing. "Hey, how are you and Cassie doing? Haven't seen you guys together in a while. Everything good? Did something happen? She seemed off last night. Last night. She seemed off last night." She'd told me she was tired. She'd canceled our dinner because she was tired. And apparently, she was out the same night, around the same crowd, being visibly off in ways people noticed. I didn't respond to any of the 3 texts right away. I made coffee. I sat by the window. I thought very carefully. Because here is what I understood now. The post wasn't just emotional venting. It was a narrative. She was building a story, not our story, her story. The story in which she was the one who'd learned and grown and survived something. And the audience didn't know me as well as they knew her. They were going to fill in the blanks the way she wanted them to. Unless someone started asking questions she couldn't cleanly answer. And that part was not up to me. That part was already set in motion simply by the fact that she'd done this publicly, with traceable details, among people who knew both of us. All I had to do was stay quiet and let the story breathe. I texted her that afternoon. Not about the post. About nothing. Hey, feeling better? She replied 4 hours later. Yeah, much better, thanks. Can we talk this week sometime? Sure. Whenever works for you. And that was it. That exchange. Normal on the surface. But we both knew it wasn't normal. We were both circling something neither of us was naming yet. She wanted to control the conversation. She wanted to choose the timing, the setting, the framing. And I was willing to let her think that's how this was going to go. I want to stop here for a second and explain something about Cassie, something I didn't fully understand about her until this moment in the story. She was brilliant at optics. Not in a cold, calculating way. Or at least, I hadn't seen it that way when we were in the good part of things. She just had a natural gift for managing how she was perceived. She always knew the right thing to post, the right tone to strike, the right amount of vulnerability to show without actually being fully vulnerable. She was warm and funny and genuinely good at making people feel seen. She made me feel seen for 2 years. But there was a version of her that operated underneath all of that. A version that kept score. A version that never fully trusted anyone. A version that always had an exit narrative prepared before she actually exited. I hadn't known that about her. Or maybe I had known it in a vague, uncomfortable way and chosen not to look directly at it. You never actually see me, she'd said. I was starting to wonder if the real problem was that I had, eventually, started to see her. And she wasn't ready for that. The week passed. She didn't bring up the talk she'd mentioned. I didn't push. I went to work. I worked out 3 times. I called my older brother on Thursday and talked about nothing important for 40 minutes. I didn't mention Cassie. I didn't check her Instagram again. I didn't need to. Brooke, who'd been one of Cassie's closest friends but had also known me for a year and a half, texted me on Wednesday. She was careful about it. Hey, I just wanted to check in. I'm not trying to be in the middle of anything. Are you okay? I said, I'm good. Thank you for asking. How are you? She replied, I'm fine. I saw the post she made. And I asked her about it. And she said it wasn't about anyone specific. But the hoodie. She stopped herself. You know what? Never mind. I shouldn't have said anything. It's okay, I said. Don't worry about it. But what Brooke had just told me, without meaning to, probably, was that Cassie had already been asked about the post. And she denied it. She denied it while posting a photo of herself in my specific hoodie, on my specific couch, taken 8 months ago. She'd looked her friend in the eye and said it wasn't about anyone. I put my phone down, quietly, and thought, okay. Here is where the pattern interrupt happened. Not for me. I was already 3 steps ahead at this point, just watching. For everyone else. It started with a girl named Sloan. Sloan was not close to Cassie. She was more of a social circle adjacent person. She showed up at the same parties, followed the same people, commented on the same posts. Sloan was also incredibly observant in the way that people who are slightly removed from a situation often are. She'd seen the Instagram story. And Sloan, being the kind of person who pays close attention to timelines, had also seen something else. About 3 weeks before Cassie's cryptic post, Sloan had seen a photo on Owen's Instagram. A dinner photo. Nothing scandalous. For people at a table, food, wine, the standard. Cassie was in that photo. Cassie was in that photo on a Friday night. The same Friday night, she'd told me she was having a low-key night in with Brooke. Sloan wasn't trying to stir anything. She was just, publicly, in the comments of a mutual friend's post, asking a completely innocent question. Something like, wait, wasn't that the same night as? And then someone else replied. And then someone else. And within a few hours, a very quiet, very polite, very devastating digital thread had formed. Connecting dates. Connecting photos. connecting the story Cassie had told people publicly with the story the timestamps were telling. I found out about this through a friend of mine, a guy named Qley who I'd known since college. Qley texted me a screenshot at 11 p.m. on a Friday with zero caption. I looked at the screenshot. I looked at it for a long time. And then I set my phone down again and went to sleep. Because there was nothing for me to do. The thing had been put in motion by Cassie herself. And it was finishing itself without any help from me at all. I'll tell you what I think actually happened. This is the part I've reconstructed over time, from things I found out later, from conversations I eventually had, from the shape of all the events put together. Owen wasn't some sudden new thing. He and Cassie had been in each other's orbit for a while. Friendly at first, genuinely just friendly, I believe that. But sometime around the cabin trip, around that genuinely good weekend we had together, something had shifted between Cassie and Owen. Not physical necessarily. Or at least, I'm not certain about the physical part. What I'm certain about is the emotional part. She'd been talking to him. Not just casually. The kind of talking you do when you're starting to let someone into the space you're supposed to be protecting for someone else. The tonight was text I'd half seen on her phone. That was probably a message about a night they'd spent talking somewhere. And the Friday night she'd told me she was in with Brooke? She'd been at dinner with a group that included Owen. Whether anything else happened, whether it crossed a line beyond emotional, I don't know with certainty. But what I know is this. She'd been building an exit. And the Instagram post was the exit door. She'd posted it to signal to her social circle, and to herself, maybe, that she was already on the other side of something. That she'd already processed it. That she was already the person who'd learned a lesson and moved on. Except she hadn't moved on. Because you can't post your way through the process. You can't perform the ending of something while you're still standing in the middle of it. And that's exactly what the timeline revealed. The post was dated after a night she'd spent with him. After a night, she'd told me she was too tired for dinner. And once people started lining those dates up, she couldn't explain it without explaining things she'd said hadn't happened. She called me the following Sunday, 11 in the morning. I was at the gym, but I saw the missed call when I got out. I called her back on the walk to my car. She picked up immediately. Hey. Short pause. Can we meet up? I feel like we need to actually talk. Sure, I said. Where do you want to meet? Maybe the coffee place near your apartment? Like 2. 2 is fine. I hung up. Sat in my car for a minute. Took a breath. Started the engine. She was already there when I arrived. She looked tired. Not the performative tired of someone who wants you to ask what's wrong. Actually tired. Circles under her eyes. She'd pulled her hair back loosely, which she usually only did when she wasn't trying to be seen. She had both hands wrapped around a coffee mug she'd clearly already been sitting with for a while. I sat down across from her. Hey, she said. And then immediately, I'm sorry. I didn't say anything. I waited. I know that post was. I know it probably looked a certain way. And I know I should have talked to you directly instead of. Who was it about? I asked. She looked at her coffee. It was just, I was having a hard night. I know, I said. But who was the post about? Long pause. I was just processing some things. Cassie. First time I'd said her name in this conversation. Who was the post about? She looked up. And in that look, in the fraction of a second before she decided what to say next, I saw it. Not guilt exactly. More like the expression of someone who's been caught not in the act of doing something wrong, but in the act of having decided not to be honest. Which is its own kind of wrong. It wasn't specifically about you, she said. You posted a photo of yourself in my hoodie, on my couch. Silence. That photo is 8 months old, I said. More silence. I've been carrying that photo around for 8 months. You've been holding on to it. You picked it specifically. And then you posted it at 1:47 in the morning on the same night you told me you were too tired for dinner. Her eyes went slightly glassy. I wasn't trying to. I know you weren't trying to be cruel, I said. But you were trying to say something. And you said it publicly. And now people are connecting things they weren't meant to connect. She set down the mug. I know, she said quietly. So now I need you to be honest with me about something. Not about the post. About what happened before the post. She looked at the table. I waited. The coffee shop was loud in the way coffee shops always are. The background hum of other people's completely ordinary mornings happening around a conversation that felt like it was ending something real. Finally, she said, I don't know how to explain it without it sounding worse than it was. Try, I said. Try to explain it. What came out over the next 40 minutes was fragmented and inconsistent and clearly edited in real time. She'd been talking to Owen for about 4 months. Started as a venting situation. She felt like there were things she couldn't bring to me because I'd minimized them or reframe them or not really hear them. The "you never actually see me" thing, again, from the fight we'd had. It became something she looked forward to. Conversations that went long. Conversations that felt easier than what we'd had for a while. She didn't call it romantic. She was very careful not to call it romantic. But she said, and this is the part that landed hardest, not because it hurt my ego, but because of how clearly she meant it, she said, "I felt more understood in 4 months of talking to him than I had in the past year with you." I didn't respond to that immediately. I let it sit. And then I asked one more question. "Did you tell him about us? About our relationship? In detail?" She nodded. "Did you tell him about our fights?" "Some of them, yeah." "The one where you said I didn't see you. Did you tell him about that one?" Pause. "Yeah." I nodded slowly. "And what did he say about me?" She looked slightly uncomfortable. "He said I deserved someone who made me feel seen." I nodded again. "He said that after hearing your version of our relationship." She didn't answer. "And did he ask about me independently? Did he ever try to reach out, get to know me, form his own opinion?" "No," she said quietly. "So he told you that you deserved better," I said, "based entirely on what you told him, based on a version of us that you constructed." She opened her mouth, closed it. "I'm not saying I was perfect," I said. "I'm not saying the problems you felt weren't real. But you built a case against our relationship to someone who had every reason to want you to believe the verdict." The table between us felt very wide. I didn't go into this trying to blow up everything," she said. "I know," I said. "That's the part that's actually sad. I'm going to be honest about something. Part of me had already known. Not the Owen part specifically, but the emotional departure part. The way she drifted toward the outside edges of rooms when I was in them. The way certain conversations had started feeling like performance reviews instead of actual talks. The way the intimacy had shifted, still present, but thinner, like something had been quietly draining from it for a while. I'd noticed it all, and I'd done what I did. Filed it, dismissed it, let it go. Which was my part of this. I don't think I was a bad partner, but I think I was a quiet one. And quiet partnerships, the kind where both people assume everything is fine because neither person is actively burning things down, have their own specific kind of danger. You can walk the same road in silence for a long time before you realize you've both quietly stopped heading to the same destination. I think she needed someone to fight for her attention. Not literally, not dramatically, but she needed to feel like she was worth choosing loudly. And I chose her quietly, every day, in ways she couldn't see because she was waiting for something more visible. And Owen had made her feel visible. I understand that. I don't have to be grateful for it, but I understand it. We left the coffee shop without resolving anything. Nothing to resolve, really. There's no resolution available for the kind of honest conversation we just had. You don't repair something by admitting it's broken. You just understand what broke it. She hugged me at the door. A real hug, not the polished, packaged kind. The kind of hug that knows it's a goodbye. "I'm sorry," she said into my shoulder. "I know," I said. "I really did love you." "I know that too," I said. And I stepped back. And I walked to my car. And I drove home. And I sat in the parking garage under my apartment building for about 7 minutes before I could actually get out. Not crying. Just sitting. Letting the weight of 2.5 years compress itself into something small enough to carry. Here is what happened with the Instagram post. After the coffee shop conversation, after word quietly spread, in the way these things spread, that Cassie and I were done, the questions started picking up momentum. Sloane's initial thread had planted a seed. And now that we'd officially ended, people started watering it. The timeline of the photo. The night she'd canceled dinner. The fact that Owen had, by this point, posted something of his own. A very subtle, very nonspecific, new chapter, kind of post that anyone who knew both of them immediately read as directional. And people started commenting. Not publicly. Nobody was dragging anyone. But in the private conversation layer that exists just beneath every social media surface. The DMs, the group chats, the screenshot threads. I know this because 3 separate people sent me variations of the same thing. People are asking questions she doesn't seem able to answer. I didn't participate. I didn't comment. I didn't respond to anything posted publicly about any of it. I went quiet on social media entirely for about 6 weeks. No posts. No stories. Nothing. I just disappeared from the digital version of the shared world we'd inhabited together. And that, somehow, communicated more than anything I could have posted. Because silence in the middle of noise is its own kind of statement. Cassie tried to navigate it. She posted a couple of things that were clearly designed to reframe the narrative, cheerful, forward-looking content. A brunch photo, a quote about growth, a video of herself laughing at something with a group of people. They performed well. People liked them. But underneath each one, in the comments, in the DMs people sent each other, the same questions kept circling. What happened? What was the timeline? What was the story with Owen? She couldn't answer any of it cleanly, because the clean answer would require her to say things she'd already denied. It would require her to walk back claims she'd made to multiple people. It would require her to acknowledge that the temporary lesson post wasn't vague inspiration, it was pointed. And the longer she went without addressing it, the more the silence confirmed what people were piecing together on their own. About 2.5 months after the original post, 79 days, give or take, she deleted it. I know because Qley texted me. She deleted the post. Okay, I replied. Screenshots still exist, he said. I know, I said. Are you doing okay? Yeah, I said. I'm actually doing okay. And I meant it. Not in the forced way people say it when they're clearly not. In the genuine, quiet, slightly surprised by yourself way. I was okay. I'd been going to the gym consistently. I'd started picking up things I'd let slip during the relationship. Old friendships I'd let go quiet. A creative project I'd been meaning to restart. The habit of cooking actual meals instead of defaulting to convenience. I wasn't performing a glow-up for an audience. I was just returning to myself. The version of me that existed before I'd organized my life around someone who'd been quietly organizing hers around someone else. Brooke texted me about 3 months after everything ended. Not about Cassie. Not about Owen. She just said, I think I owe you an apology. Why? I asked. Because I knew something was off and I didn't say anything because I didn't want to be in the middle of it. And I think you would have wanted to know. I thought about that for a moment. You don't owe me an apology, I said. I feel like I do. Brooke, I said, you were her friend first. You were trying to do the right thing in an impossible position. I don't hold that against you. Long pause. Then, she's not with Owen, for what it's worth. I don't think it went the way she thought it would. I didn't ask for more detail than that. I'm sorry to hear that, I said. And I meant it. Not sarcastically. Not triumphantly. Actually. Because there's no version of this story where everyone walking away hurt is something I wanted. I didn't want her to suffer. I wanted her to have been honest. There's a difference. I ran into her once. About 4 months after everything. Grocery store. The kind of encounter that feels like the universe has a deeply unfunny sense of humor. She was in the produce section. I was looking for something in the refrigerated section nearby. We both saw each other at almost exactly the same time. That frozen half-second where neither person has decided yet how to be. She looked good. Tired around the eyes still, maybe, but put together. She gave a small wave. I gave a small wave back. We didn't walk toward each other. We didn't walk away from each other dramatically. We just continued doing what we were doing. She picked out whatever she'd come there for. I picked out what I needed. We checked out at different registers. And by the time I got to my car, she was already gone. No dramatic last words. No cinematic exchange. Just two people who used to be everything to each other, briefly occupying the same physical space, and then not. That's what the end of real things looks like. Not explosions. Just grocery stores. There's something I've thought about a lot in the time since all of this. About why she posted the story. Not what she was trying to accomplish. I understand that part now. But why she couldn't just talk to me. Why, when something in the relationship was breaking down, the instinct wasn't to come directly to me, but to build a secondary world with someone else, and then use social media to announce her exit from the primary one. I think it comes down to this. She didn't trust the conversation we'd have. She'd decided, at some point, probably months before the post, that I wasn't someone she could bring the full truth to without it going badly. And that decision, whether it was based in reality or fear or something she'd told herself, made her start building her exit before she'd actually left. And the tragedy, the actual tragedy, is that I might have been able to handle it. We might have been able to talk. We might have been able to fix it, or at least end things cleanly, without the post, without the timeline, without the questions people were asking her in those last months. But she didn't give it a chance. She gave Owen a chance. She gave her audience a chance. She didn't give me one. And I spent a long time trying not to be angry about that. Not succeeding perfectly, if I'm honest, but trying. The post is gone now. Deleted quietly, without announcement. In the middle of an ordinary week when she finally decided the questions weren't stopping and the screenshots were still circulating, and the only way to stop performing the story was to take down the original performance. But here's the thing about deleting something on the internet. You can remove the file. You can't remove the memory of it. People remember what they saw. People saved what they found important. And the narrative she'd tried to build, the one where she was the person who'd learned and grown and moved on gracefully, quietly collapsed under the weight of its own inconsistencies. Not because I did anything. Not because I said anything. Not because I posted a single cryptic thing at 1:47 in the morning. But because the truth has this stubborn quality about it. It doesn't need help. It just needs time. I'm in a different place now. Different job. Not dramatically different. But I took on more responsibility, started a project I'd been sitting on for years. Different daily rhythm. Different relationship. Carefully, slowly, honestly different. Someone who doesn't post cryptic things at 2 a.m. Someone who comes to me directly when something is wrong. Someone who, the first time she felt something uncomfortable between us, sat down and said, "I need to tell you something because I don't want it to become a thing we can't talk about." And I looked at her, and I said, "Tell me." And she did. And we talked for 2 hours. And nothing had to be performed for anyone. Nothing had to be decoded. Nothing was posted. Nothing had to be deleted later. Just two people being honest with each other. Simple, quiet, real. I still have the hoodie, by the way. She never returned it. I found out, after everything, that she'd given it back to Brooke to pass along to me. Apparently, she'd dropped it off at Brooke's place about a week after our coffee shop conversation, unable to face giving it to me directly. Brooke had been meaning to tell me for a while. She finally handed it over about 2 months later, a little apologetic about the delay. I took it. I washed it. I wore it on a cold Tuesday in November. It's just a hoodie. It's not symbolic anymore. That's how you know you've actually moved on. Not when something stops hurting, but when it stops meaning something it isn't. When it goes back to being just a thing. Just olive green fabric. Just warmth when it's cold. Nothing more. Nothing less. She posted, "Some people are just temporary lessons." And she was right. Not about me being her lesson. About the lesson part. People teach you things, even when, especially when, the way they do it isn't fair or kind or intentional. She taught me that quiet devotion isn't enough if the person you're devoted to needs to hear it louder. She taught me that seeing something and choosing not to look at it directly isn't the same as everything being fine. She taught me that the most important conversations are the ones you're most afraid to have. And she taught me, without meaning to, that when someone tells a story about you to an audience instead of to your face, the audience will eventually start asking questions. And the questions will always be harder to answer than the truth would have been. She deleted the post. But I never had to delete anything. Because I never posted. I just waited. And sometimes that's the most powerful thing you can do. Not fight. Not post. Not perform. Just wait. And let the truth be louder than the noise. Some people are just temporary lessons. She was mine too. And I passed.